9. Lionel Tate. In the above picture, Lionel is much older than he was at the time of the crime. Lionel Tate is believed to be one of the youngest boys ever sentenced to life in prison without parole for the brutal murder of a 6-year-old girl. A young girl, Tiffany, was found dead in the home of Lionel Tate, after his mother agreed to babysit the girl. At first, no one was sure why the child had been found not breathing in their home, but 2 days later, an autopsy proved that there might be a sinister reason for her death. The results showed that the young girl suffered fractures to her skull as well as a ton of internal bruising. Lionel claimed that he had only been wrestling playfully with Tiffany, but the jury didn't buy it. After being convicted of life in prison, he was eventually granted a new trial and given short terms of house arrest and probation. A 13-year-old girl killed her entire family. If you found out your 13-year-old daughter wanted to hang out with her 23-year-old boyfriend, you probably wouldn't permit it, right? Would you do so if you knew it would result in your murder? Unfortunately, this was the case for the family of a young girl from Alberta. The girl had had an ongoing relationship with the older man. Obviously, because of their age difference, many problems occurred. The two would often joke about killing the girl's family, but she claimed she was never serious about it. One night it became a reality when the man came over to the young girl's house. He then killed her mother and father and urged the young girl to stab her little brother. She did so, but was unable to finish the job, so he finished him off. The girl wasn't tried as an adult, as she didn't actually commit any murders. Aiding was enough to still have her sentenced to prison until she reached 18, with years of supervision after. (7) Christopher Pittman. Christopher Pittman was a young 12-year-old boy who was convicted of murdering his grandparents while they slept. The matter of the case was what made it very disturbing. Christopher was a troubled child who had issues with anger and depression. After he made an attempt to run away, he was put on antidepressants to help with his behavior. After having an argument at school and later with his grandparents, Christopher murdered his grandmother and grandfather while they slept. He then took the gun, his dog, some cash, and set the house on fire with a candle. He claimed that a large man kidnapped him, but later confessed to what he actually did. Christopher's defense claimed that the use of the antidepressant Zoloft made him commit his crimes. He was still convicted of murder and sentenced to 25 years in prison. (6) Jamarian Bourne. The case of Jamarian is quite a disturbing one. At the time of the crime, he was only 12 years old when he chose a random victim on the playground to stab and kill. He chose 9-year-old Connor, who hadn't known who Jamarian was at the time. After he stabbed Connor, he simply asked to borrow someone's cell phone and called the police on himself. When asked why he had chosen to commit the crime, he claimed that it was because he wanted to get arrested and sentenced to death. He simply no longer wanted to live anymore. It was discovered that he was subject to a lot of physical and mental abuse from his mother and stepfather, and that he had often talked about wanting to die. It was discovered that he was subject to a lot of physical and mental abuse from his mother and stepfather, and that he had often talked about wanting to die. (5) Jordan Brown. Jordan Brown was only 11 years old when he opened fire on his soon-to-be stepmom. At the time of her murder, she was also pregnant with Jordan's future half-brother. After he murdered his father's fiancée while she slept, Jordan boarded the school bus like it was any other morning. Apparently, Jordan was heard before the murder stating that he would like to shoot his future stepmom and the woman's daughters. Unfortunately, it was one of the woman's daughters who found her dead in her bed. The baby inside of her died as well. Family members claimed that Jordan was a troubled kid who had anger issues. His father maintained the son's innocence throughout the trial, claiming someone else had committed the crime. Many suspect that Jordan was jealous of the new baby and new marriage, so that was his motive for the gruesome murder. (4) Andrew Golden and Mitchell Johnson. Mitchell Johnson, 11, and 13-year-old Andrew Golden were just middle school students when they decided to open fire on their classmates. They loaded up a car with supplies and weapons stolen from their parents. They went to school like any normal day and pulled the fire alarm. Then, everyone lined up outside in the proper protocol for a fire. There, Mitchell and Andrew opened fire on the classmates waiting outside. They killed several teachers and students as well as injuring many in the process. They both attempted to flee the scene but instead were caught. They were tried as adults, both being released from prison when they turned 18. Golden has gone on to live a fairly normal life while trying to maintain his anonymity. Johnson is still in prison, as he was arrested and charged several times after being released for various crimes. We've heard of plenty of school shootings, but when it comes from an 11 and 13-year-old, it can be extra unsettling. (3) Mary Bell. Mary Bell is one of the most infamous children on the list, as she was known for being one of the first famous child murderers. She is responsible for murdering 2 different young boys within a 3-month time span. Both children were murdered with her bare hands, the second time with a 13-year-old accomplice. The murders took place in the 60s, and since then Mary has been released from prison and has had a daughter. The nature of the crimes was brutal, as after Mary strangled the second child, she went back to carve her initials into the stomach of the dead boy. She also mutilated different body parts. It's very interesting to imagine where she could be right now and what she thinks of her vicious crimes. Does she feel remorseful every day, or has she been able to move on and forget her own brutal past? (2) Dedra Cohens. We've already heard about the disturbing case of young boys who brought guns to school, but this one is even worse. Dedra Cohens decided to take a gun and a knife to school when he was only 6 years old. There, he pulled a gun on 6-year-old Kayla Rowland, pictured above, fatally shooting her. Before he shot her, he stated that he didn't like her. He only shot her in the arm, but it still hit a major artery, resulting in her death. He ended up not being charged, as anyone under the age of 7 cannot be held responsible for murder. His father was charged with manslaughter and served a short prison term for allowing Dedrick to have easy access to the gun. We have to wonder, is it okay that he did not serve any time in juvenile court for the murder? What was going on in this little boy's brain when this happened? (1) Robert Thompson and John Venables. The murder that Robert Thompson and John Venables committed has to be the most brutal on the list. The two look like such innocent children in the picture, but in reality, they committed crimes more gruesome than most adults. The victim was 2-year-old James Bulger, who was taken by the two while shopping with his mother. Robert and John then took the boy to a secluded area, threw paint in his eye, beat him with bricks and stones, forced batteries into his mouth, and dropped a 22-pound iron onto his head. He suffered over 40 injuries in total. After murdering the innocent James, the boys placed him on a train track hoping many would assume it was the train that caused the incident. The train did slice him in half, though autopsies revealed the traumas he suffered. Robert and John only served short terms, since they were each only 10 years old at the time. Since being released, Robert has maintained his privacy with a new identity. However, John has been in and out of prison since.